Good evening. On this day in 1972, then President Ferdinand Marcos signed Proclamation 1081, declaring martial law in the Philippines. Thousands of Filipinos were imprisoned, tortured, and killed as the Marcos family amassed power, wealth, and control. Hashtag never forget and never again. Martial law, the dark chapter in the Philippine history. On the evening of September 23, 1972, the late President Ferdinand Marcos appeared on national television to formally announce that the Philippines was under martial law. This began almost 10 years of military rule in the country. Marcos formally ended martial law on January 17, 1981, but it was not until 1986 when democracy was restored, after the dictator and his family were forced into exile, overthrown by a popular uprising that came to be known as the People Power Revolution. On the anniversary of the declaration of martial law, we take a look back at some of the lingering questions behind the declaration and the consequent events that shaped Philippine history. Why was martial law declared? When Marcos signed Proclamation 1081 on September 21, 1972, he cited the communist threat as justification. His diary, meanwhile, said the proclamation of martial law became a necessity following the supposed ambush of then Defense Secretary Juan Ponce in Rile. There were subsequent reports that said the ambush was staged, with the official Gazette citing Enrile's admission in 1986 that it was faked to justify the imposition of martial law. And this was what happened. Martial law 101 things you should know. Manila, Philippines. Updated. Martial law in Mindanao will last for another year as the Senate and House of Representatives approved in a joint session on Wednesday, December 13. President Rodrigo Duterte's request to extend the effectivity of his proclamation until December 31st, 2018. In a letter, Duterte explained to Congress that the extension is needed primarily to ensure total eradication of Daesh-inspired Da'awatul Islamiyah Waliyatul Masrik or DIWM, other like-minded local foreign terrorist groups or FTGs and armed lawless groups ALGs, and the communist terrorist cities and their cuddlers, supporters, and financiers. It was the second time martial law was approved after Congress used or voted on July 22 to extend the rule for another 5 months. This is the second localized martial law declaration on December 5, 2009. Then President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo declared martial law in Maguindanao through Proclamation 1959 following the massacre of 58 people, mostly members of the media, in the town of Ampatuan. She lifted in 7 days later on December 12, 2009 upon the recommendation of the cabinet. Duterte is the third president to declare martial law since after the war. Proclamation of 1081, which placed the entire Philippines under martial law, was signed by former President Ferdinand Marcos on September 21, 1972. On September 23, at exactly 7:15 p.m., he appeared on television to formally announce it. There were also indications that the plan to declare martial law had long been in the world or had long been in the works. According to the official Gazette, several people had received prior information about Marcos' plan. The late dictator had also hinted at it in his address to the Philippine Military Academy Alumni Association as early as May 17, 1969, more than 3 years before the actual declaration. What happened under martial law? Through various general orders, Marcos effectively put the entire power of government under the rule of one man, his own. He was to lead the nation and direct the operation of the entire government. He ordered the armed forces to prevent or suppress any act of rebellion. Curfew hours were enforced. Group assemblies were banned. Privately owned media facilities shuttered. Those considered threats to Marcos, such as prominent politicians and members of the media, were rounded up and arrested by members of the military and the notorious Philippine constabulary. What did the martial law years look like? There are those who hail the discipline and supposed order of the new society as Marcos coded and consider that period as among the best years of the Philippines. Among the myths that the Philippines enjoyed a golden age under the Marcoses, various reports and historical accounts debunk this. While it is true that infrastructure spending increased during this period or that period, it came at a staggering cost, plunging the Philippines in billions of dollars in debt. From $8.2 billion in 1977, the country's debt ballooned to $24.4 billion in 1982, or within a period of just 5 years. The Marxists also plundered the country's coffers, with various estimates putting the amount at between $5 billion to $10 billion. The Presidential Commission on Good Government, the body going after the Marcoses' ill-gotten wealth, is still recovering this money. Over the past 30 years. At least 170 billion have been recovered. Aside from the billions in illegally amassed wealth, human rights abuses were rampant during those days. About 70,000 people were imprisoned and 34,000 tortured, according to Amnesty International, while 3,240 were killed from 1972 to 1981. During this dark chapter of Philippine history, thousands of people were subject to various forms of torture. Prisoners were electrocuted, beaten up, and strangled. They were burned with a flat iron or cigars. Water was poured down their throats, then forced out by beating. Women were stripped naked and raped. Various objects forced into their genitals. Historian Alfred McCoy wrote about Marcos' elite torture units, whose specialty was psychological torture and humiliation aside from the physical pain. It has been many years since then, but the victims have not forgotten, especially as the Marxists have neither acknowledged their crimes nor made reparations for their sins.